My name is Kris Gethin, and what I aim to bring to you is inspiration, motivation from clients, everything that will allow you to evolve as a human being. Hello, everybody. This is the Kris Gethin podcast, and I'm absolutely honored to have my guest on today. And we were actually introduced by our mutual friend, Andy Mant, who owns Blue Block. So he said, you have to have this guy on your show. And I'd actually read your book prior to this, which I have right in front of me, which is the Tinfoil Guide to EMFs. And this gentleman in front of me is known as the EMF guy, Nicholas Pinault. So he is an investigative health journalist, an educator, an advocate of technologies. And like I said, you authored this book, and it's been endorsed by a lot of people that we know in the space, such as Dr. Joe McCullough. And it tackles every topic when it comes to electromagnetics, satellites, dirty electricity, absolutely everything. That's what I really love about this book, is that you cover not only just EMFs, but your microwaves, various frequencies, X-rays, etc., and how it can have a negative impact on our lives if we don't control it. And you also launched the Electromag RX online course. Have I got that correct? The name of that?
I've got two courses. There's one for let's say health practitioners, Electrosmog RX, and the other one I launched with Brian Hoyer, who you're familiar with, is called Electro Pollution Fix, and that's more for the public to help them clean up their homes from EMFs.
Right. Okay. And have I got the pronunciation of your last name correct? Nicholas Pinault?
It's Pinot, like the wine.
Pinot. Pinot.
Yeah.
Pinot.
There you go.
All right. Lovely. Okay. And you actually have an EMF Hazard Summit that's happening on the 24th to the 27th, which I'm really, really excited to actually attend. And we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later on, how people can attend that online. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can hear from Nick and a lot of expert speakers over that weekend. Let's start off with that, actually. We'll revisit it, but let's start off. What are you going to be covering, just briefly, overview, in that EMF Hazard Summit?
Yeah, EMF Hazard Summit, what I wanted to do a little bit differently. I know there's a lot of online summits on many topics, whether it's muscle building to women hormones and thyroid health, and there's an infinite amount of them. But I find that even for myself, I have a hard time listening to 40 experts with like an hour or an hour and a half talk each. So I decided to gather all these experts. There's doctors who are aware of EMFs and talk in terms of electrosensitivity. There's attorneys that are presently, for example, having lawsuits against the FCC, Federal Communication Commissions, and talk about how is it possible that we're exposed to all this technology that is unsafe. But all these interviews are 15 to 20 minutes long. And that's what I wanted to do differently, something that you can actually consume. And these interviews are pretty packed and short and sweet. So this is really what's different about the format. So we have 25 experts, and there's also, I give one session on electrosensitivity, and you're going to really learn. If you're not familiar with EMFs, it's a great intro. If you're already familiar with EMFs, you're going to learn other things. We talk specifically about dirty electricity with top building biologist Aura Miller, and we talk about different angles. So it's a little bit of everything when it comes to EMFs, the safety of EMF or lack thereof, and how to mitigate EMFs at home. We do have Andy Mant also, who talks about blue blockers. If you're just not so familiar with them, you're going to love the session. Just learn how to use them, and why on earth are we looking like Bono today on this interview?
Yeah, not quite as cool.
No.
So for the listeners that are, new to EMFs, can you explain what EMFs are? And number two, how on earth did you stumble across this as now your profession?
Sure. So EMF stands for electromagnetic fields, and it's a very large definition. Electromagnetic field is a bit of a misnomer. It's not one thing. It's an entire spectrum of frequency. It's all the frequencies that we're exposed to and have been for since the advent of humankind. And even before that, on Earth, you have very extremely low frequencies. For example, the natural magnetism or magnetic field that is emitted by the planet is in the very low frequency. We're also exposed, even if you fly at 30,000 feet, you're exposed to X-rays, gamma rays, and these extremely high frequencies that are way higher than visible light. For example, somewhere in the middle, you have visible light. A little bit lower on the spectrum, you have microwave radiation or radio frequency radiation. And that's the bulk of these new exposures that we have never been exposed to in nature. Or we did get exposed to a little bit from space when it comes to microwaves, but the bulk of our exposure nowadays it has increased tremendously. And that's in the form of Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cell phones, cell towers. So that's all the man-made EMFs that I'm interested in, because yes, we're exposed to EMFs all the time. You get in the sun, you're exposed to a ton of EMFs, but these have been designed in a certain way to be compatible with biology, whereas other EMFs, not so much. So that's really my big concern. And how I got into this is a background in communications and I guess curiosity and just an obsession with certain topics that where I'm not able to really process how is it possible that we're exposed to things that are unsafe, and everyone is kind of blindsided by these things. I started with food toxins and toxins in our tap water. When I discovered that here in Montreal, there's probably unsafe levels of lead in tap water just because of old lead piping, and no one seems to care that much about it, when we know that just a little bit of lead is very detrimental to your health. In fact, it looks like every decade they decide, oh, you know what, the amount of lead that's permissible should be halved and halved and halved, because we discovered that it's more and more dangerous. Not because it becomes more dangerous, but because our understanding is more precise on that matter. So I started with that background of food toxins and toxin in the air and water, and then when I stumbled upon the topic of the safety of cell phones in particular, I was a little bit shocked, because I was here, a nutrition author, writing on my laptop on Wi-Fi. I had Bluetooth headphones, Bluetooth keyboard, everything wireless, right? And when I read that, oh, these things are unsafe, and I read many different scientists like Dr. Martin Blank, who had a PhD in, he was both a physicist and a biologist. So he understood both fields. And this is really the background you need to understand this thing on a scientific standpoint. I was really shocked that someone from the Columbia University and other doctors at very prestigious position were kind of risking their careers, saying, guys, this is everything but safe. And since then, I've learned things that everyone can verify, because I know it's met with a lot of skepticism on the internet, a lot of pejorative terms like, oh, this is tinfoil hatter stuff, right? That's why my title of my book, The Non-Tinfoil Guide to EMS, you mentioned at the beginning, I think you said the tinfoil guide, but people even call me the tinfoil guy sometimes, because it's kind of a joke. But in reality, it's met with a lot of skepticism. And I understand that, because we've been led to believe that this is crazy talk. No, of course it's safe. We're exposed to the sun all the time. So how is it possible that a cell phone wouldn't be safe when it's such a low power level of exposure? And that's true. However, what is not considered in the equation of health is whether these frequencies have certain characteristics that are foreign to our body. The sun rays are completely different in their characteristics compared to a cell phone. A cell phone is not optimized or designed for human health in mind. When you do that with signal, with man-made EMFs, it's called PEMF. It's called the Pulsed Electromagnetic Field Therapy device. And I'm using it daily. There's something that I got sent, a Flex Pulse. I don't know if you're familiar with this one, but I use that on my knees. I've just started running very recently. I'm training for a Spartan race, so I'm training pretty hard compared to what I used to do. I run these on my knees. It really works. But why does it work, and why would cell phone be dangerous at the same time? It's kind of bizarre, but the PEMF device has been designed a certain way with harmonious waves. For example, just the waveform, how it looks. A cell phone is optimized for connectivity. So when you look on an EMF meter, a reader that you can use professionally, and that people like Brian Hoyer, who's an EMF mitigation specialist, use to read the waveforms, they see that it's completely erratic. So it's erratic, it is pulsed, and it's simply not optimized with human health in mind. And that's the fundamental difference between the natural EMFs or even the therapeutic use of EMF, including red light panels and other light-based technologies, and the man-made EMFs that should be considered electropollution, because they don't serve a purpose of they serve a purpose for communication purposes, or to record this interview if we're on Wi-Fi, for example. But the exposure itself is kind of a secondary smoke that we should avoid. It's not something that is the goal here. The goal is connectivity and whatnot, but it's really the problem is a lot of denial around that entire sphere. And this is why I keep going, because there's still a lot of people who are in disbelief in front of this information.
Yeah, because it's invisible, right? There's nothing for people to point the finger at. And when some people, are exposed to something over a duration of time, they never really notice the difference. That's why people who eat McDonald's every day, they don't feel any difference eating it the 7th day, 8th day, 9th day. I haven't had McDonald's for years. However, if I go eat a McDonald's now, I'm going to feel terrible because I'm going to feel the toxins in there, So maybe if somebody was to come out from the boonies and they are possibly electrosensitive, then they're going to feel that almost immediately. I tell you when I feel it, the majority of the time. I travel a lot when I stay in hotels. I try to unplug as much as I can. It isn't always successful. If I travel to, say, Dubai and I'm staying in a nice hotel, everything is via an iPad. If I cannot close the curtains by my hands, that it's a
oh my God.
You know what I mean? So I'm getting penetrated. Yeah. And I can pretty much guarantee, especially if I'm staying on a higher level where I'm exposed to more satellite signals, EMFs, and obviously routers throughout everyone's room, even though I may have the most comfortable bed, I just cannot sleep. I feel like I'm being penetrated with all these, these different frequencies, and it really, really does affect me. My wife, on the other hand, won't affect her whatsoever. Yeah. So obviously you're going to get both sides of that story, and some people are going to argue it. Hey, I'm fine, not going to feel it. Well, you may not feel it from you may not have any symptoms externally, but internally you may. Much like the person who goes to McDonald's, for instance. So
that's completely correct. Yeah, I agree with your assessment totally. The degree of sensitivity is very individual, and I wouldn't even say that it has to do with overall health. It looks like there's genetic factors as well, where some people are in perfect health and are just sensitive, and that's just how it is. I think maybe it's akin to certain food intolerances where you might be in perfect health, but maybe gluten isn't for you or corn isn't for you. And that's a pretty much N=1 experiment you have to run for yourself. But in all cases, you're right that I think EMF, as far as electropollution goes, less is better for everyone. So avoidance or reduction of exposure would lead to benefits for everyone, regardless of symptoms. That's pretty clear to me right now.
Yeah, for sure. We cannot completely block off everything, even if we lived in the wilderness, where there's still going to be some type of exposure. I do whatever I can. Obviously, I want to learn from you in this interview what I can do more of. I've got like the Blue Blocks pad here now. I have like the Defender Shield case. I have the Blue Blocks harmonizing, switch off the Wi-Fi. I'm not sleeping in a Faraday cage just yet, even though Brian did have me sleep in it for 2 nights in a row. And I quantify my sleep with the Oura Ring. I had the best night's sleep. It was great. Incredible. And I wear, obviously, some of the clothing, the underwear. I earth myself whenever I possibly can. So I'm doing whatever I can, to kind of keep myself afloat and try to mitigate myself from the damage. But the one thing that I really like that you cover in your book is things like, your microwave in your house, the dirty electricity that you could potentially have. How can somebody go through their house without having someone like Brian Hoyer? Obviously, if you can contact Brian Hoyer and he's coming through your city, please do contact him. But if not, what can people do to find out if they are exposed to these frequencies, and then run a diagnostic and do whatever they can to lower that load that they're being penetrated by?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is exactly the question that Brian and I have asked ourselves almost 2 years ago when we started creating our course. And it was really, okay, it's kind of overwhelming for the average person to think about EMFs. And it's a bit daunting. Many people, including, it's funny a little bit shocking to me still when doctors, there's one functional medicine doctor who's very famous who wrote to me yesterday and said, I just read your book. That was the title of his email. And he said, I was very scared. And I was like, oh my God. Yeah, that's kind of the feeling you get, because if you discover, for example, that EMFs can interfere with performance, sleep quality, fertility, you see all these studies and you realize, okay, well, it's everywhere. So what can I do about it? It's very frustrating. You see towers. Now you come to recognize that there's routers in every room in hotel rooms, and it's a little bit daunting. But the thing you have to remember is this. You start with the bedroom. And we could almost stop there and you would tackle the bulk of your exposure, or at least the one that matters the most, because it looks like the signals from phones, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and all EMFs pretty much all act the same way. They are agitating and prevent you from having the best night of sleep. And I think that might be one of the primary mechanisms that might explain why it could be a carcinogen. You have poor sleep, and that might have to do with the reduction of the release of the melatonin hormone at night. So it might do the same thing as visible blue light, although this one from cell phone is a type of light, if you will, or an EMF that's invisible. Your pineal gland and other body parts might perceive that signal as light and then delay or just skip the release of melatonin. So it means that your sleep won't be as deep as it could have been. And then repair goes out of the window. Your hormones aren't optimized. And the cascade from the loss of sleep quality might be huge on a human performance standpoint, and then on a recovery standpoint, if you have chronic fatigue, or you're trying to heal from something, from a wound, or just you're feeling horrible at the moment and you need that sleep time. And that's really the problem. What we're trying to achieve with interventions such as the ones we're going to talk about today is not to do something fancy or futuristic. It's merely going back to normal. And that's important to say it and to repeat it to ourselves. These levels of EMFs were not around 100 years ago. They were not around 10 years ago. They were not around 5 years ago, because it keeps increasing the amount of different devices and the intensity of the electro smog in a city environment. So all that to say, long story made short, clean your bedroom first. And it means that if you have something in your bedroom that could be emitting wireless, you will remove it from the room altogether or make sure it's turned off, but certainly not keep it close to your pillow. And right there, I see the statistics among teenagers, how many of them sleep with their phones. And I've seen everything from 50 to 75%. I think in certain neighborhoods, it might be 100% of smartphone users that fall asleep with their phone under the pillow, on them, near the bedstand, very close to them. And it keeps downloading things during the night. When you have notifications, you might put it on sleep mode or something where it's silent. You don't want to be woken up by this buzzing, but it will still emit. And this is really problematic. So what you should do instead is turn it off. And if you expect a call, and I know a lot of people these days don't have a corded landline, you put it in another room, ringer maximum. If you expect call, you have maybe teenage kids, or there's a lot of situations where people still want to be on call, and that's fine with me, but put it as far as possible from your pillow. So right there with the phone, you want to tackle that. Then in hotel rooms, it's very common. I see two other offenders. I see a cordless phone, the one with a base station that you can take away and you can walk around with it. There's no cord. So that base station is equivalent to a cell phone a miniature cell phone tower, if you will. Sometimes it's quite powerful. And I've seen it one time in Vegas. I couldn't even unplug the phone. So I wrapped it in tinfoil and put it on Instagram. And people thought I was completely silly, but it actually kind of dampened the signal 90%. So it was something, but I couldn't move it. I couldn't unplug it. And I think if I had unplugged it, I think security would have been called or something crazy. So I was like, okay, no, I don't want to get into any trouble. So that phone needs to go or needs to move as far as possible from the bedstand. In certain situations, I've been able to simply turn it off, and then no one could call me. I guess the front desk might have been unsatisfied with how I use the phone, but who cares? I want great sleep, right? You have these comfortable beds, king size beds, good pillows. It smells fresh. It's a beautiful room. And then you sleep horrible. It happens to me all the time. I get you. So there's that. And then the second thing you want to look for also is that alarm clock. I keep seeing alarm clocks nowadays that not only are plugged into the wall, so they might emit a small magnetic field around it if it's very close to your pillow. Not only that, but they have a Bluetooth function in them. And what a lot of people don't understand is our technology nowadays is built so poorly that engineers make it so that even though there's no phones around, you have no intention of using that Bluetooth connectivity between your phone and the alarm clock, it is still emitting. And it is emitting all the time, almost every second. So it's completely useless electropollution in that case, because you have no intention of using it, and it's just there, and it's just pinging signal, looking for a phone, saying, I'm here. Where's your phone? So you can unplug that thing altogether, use your phone instead as an alarm clock. On airplane mode, it's good, but it's becoming increasingly hard, because even on airplane mode nowadays, the latest iPhone 12 and 13, there's the Find My Phone, or the what is it called? Basically the GPS service, the location services still emit a little bit of EMF. So with these new technologies, it's kind of silly, but it's really moving in the wrong direction. So it's becoming increasingly hard to reduce exposure. So that's why I would turn it off altogether. Or in my case, what I would do is put it maybe on the desk, like very far away from the pillow, put it on airplane mode, have my alarm clock on there, and then ditch the alarm clock that's Bluetooth enabled. And that's about it for the bedroom. And if in your bedroom you realize you have other machines like a laptop open on Wi-Fi or these other gizmos, just try to turn everything off that you can. And this is even though neighbors might be using routers and Wi-Fi, and you might see this laundry list of Wi-Fi signals, the ones that are closer to your body are your own Wi-Fi, your own phone. So it still matters what you do. And that's something that a lot of people fail to understand. And they kind of throw their hands up in the air and say, oh my God, there's nothing I can do about that. But in reality, the bulk of your exposure, it's still true that it often comes from your personal devices. So you have full control over overdose.
Interesting. That's absolutely fascinating. And what I noticed as well in your non-tinfoil guide to EMFs is that you speak about quite a lot of experts and researchers that were funded by telecommunication companies, for instance, to show the safety of their networks, when in fact, during that time, they would discover things that weren't safe at all. And when they wanted to be public with that, next thing they were asked either to be quiet or they were asked to leave their job. So what are some of the negative health implications that we can expect, and maybe children as well? You know, what I thought was fascinating is that in a lot of phone cases, when you get the manual or when you get the guide, there are warnings inside that are written there from the companies. However, who reads them? Not many people read them, but it's out there, kind of like public knowledge, but nobody's talking about it. So what are some of those implications that, certain people could expect?
Sure. The first one, the most studied one, is the link between cell phone use to the ear, to the head, and brain cancer. And that's the most extreme example. Oftentimes, the brain tumors wouldn't develop before a few decades, up to 50 plus years in the lag between a certain carcinogenic exposure and the development of a tumor. So, for example, the Hiroshima survivors are still seeing increases of cancer generations down the road. So there's even generational carcinogenicity there. But we know that if you put it on your ear, you're kind of, in a sense, you might be risking your life. And that's an extreme example. But if you talk for several minutes to several hours every day, maybe you're like my dad, you're a realtor, or you're in finances, or you're a business person, always on the phone on the ear. And some people still do that. It's a very bad idea. It's the most dangerous type of tumor you could get is a glioblastoma, which is quite deadly. There's other tumors that are thought to be linked with cell phones, including the parotid gland, so salivary gland, thyroid. There's also acoustic neuromas that might lead to complication, including hear loss or death. So that's the most concerning thing. However, nowadays, the good thing I see is more and more people stop using a phone on the ear, but they use it in other places. So a lot of people do like this near the heart. I see people shirt pocket. I've talked to or I've heard of one functional medicine cardiologist and another one that I interviewed, and both of them agree that some patients come in their clinic with heart palpitations and other heart problems. They can link it back directly to the fact that they keep their phone in the pocket 24/7 or nearly like all their waking hours. So it's an example of, well, if it causes tumor here, what do you think it will cause in other body parts? And we're left with a big question mark as far as science goes about what does it do in the groin area with all these men and women who keep a phone in their pocket all the time. We know it will harm your fertility. There's a review that came out of Busan University, or I think it might be Busan or Busan from South Korea, and it just reaffirmed that there's no denying it will harm men's fertility. The thing is, and a lot of men have told me, Nick, that's perfect, kind of scoffing at the idea, right? Kind of trying to be almost smart asses, part of the term, but they say, oh, Nick, I don't want any children. So that's perfect. It's kind of removing my fertility. Ha, ha, ha. But think about that. Your fertility as a man is a good marker for overall longevity and also hormonal health. So yeah, if you still have amazing sperm quality in your 50s and 60s, well, it means you're in great shape. You can still reproduce. That's something. For women, it's pretty much the same. A woman that can still conceive in their 40s, 45 and beyond, it's kind of incredible. And you know that you have this body in a great shape. So do not underestimate the reality that it will reduce sperm motility and many other characteristics of sperm quality. In women, it might be even more concerning because they get one set of eggs for their entire existence. So we don't know exactly what it does. Whereas men, in 2 months, they can completely renew their spermatozoa. So there's no big deal if you've been exposed all your life. You can just stop that exposure and then you're going to renew your fertility. So you can start now, and it just comes down to not having a phone in your pocket all the time. If you sit down at your office, obviously it's my bedroom / office, you just put your phone in front of you. Don't keep it there in your pockets. It's just a bad habit. So oftentimes there's what I like about this work and why I wanted to put more effort is there's some products, and you mentioned there's the glasses, there's some products to be sold, but most of the advice I give out is free and easy. So removing a phone from your pocket doesn't take a lot of thinking. It just takes a new habit. It's a quick habit that you have to do. When you put it in your pocket, you might put it there, but make sure it's on airplane mode or turned off, or carry it in a bag, in a backpack. Any other way you can do this that is not on your person. So I've talked about brain tumors, fertility. The third one would be sleep. And there's some disagreements among researchers. Does it drop melatonin levels? It's unclear. But what I can tell you is that's the number one symptom that will improve when I tell people to stop using their phone at night or turn it off or turn off the Wi-Fi in their home is improvement of sleep. And that's also seen among all the functional medicine doctors that are aware of EMFs and seeing people with sensitivities. So what it tells me is this: we don't want to wait until we have all the scientific mechanisms figured out before we start turning off the damn phone at night. We can start now. And if you see benefits for yourself, if you can quantify these benefits scientifically using Oura Ring or other technologies, and you're like, wait a minute, I think I get 30 minutes more sleep, or my sleep quality is improved 10%, then you know that it's impacting you. But it does mean that you have to recognize that that signal is invisible, and yet it looks like it's still doing something to my body. So there's many other symptoms that might be attributed to EMFs in that sense, including sleep loss, including some people that get a lot of brain fog. And I was one of them, but it can vary depending, as you mentioned, individual sensitivity, but also current state of health. The example I give people is I started writing my book in 2016, and I wrote it on Wi-Fi, ironically. But I kind of said that in the book, and I said, well, I'm kind of blasting myself right now, so I don't know if that's a good idea. But I still did it and just wanted to show people, look, I'm still human. I still use that wireless keyboard. After the book, I gave it away, and I have corded everything now. But I used to get massive brain fog after just an hour on Wi-Fi or 2 hours of work. And nowadays, my health has improved so much, and I've been working with a functional medicine doctor, that normally I don't get any symptoms on Wi-Fi. But still, so it shows you that the same individual might have certain symptoms, and over the years, it might change. It might worsen, it might ameliorate. But in my case, I don't get the symptoms anymore. But it does not mean I'll stop avoiding exposure or reducing exposure, right? So you should still do it regardless of symptoms. But the reality is, if you feel super sensitive, you may get better through certain interventions. So that's the good news, I guess.
Okay, interesting. And I was going to say to all the people out there that are potentially bodybuilders, you can get away with this by wearing like a fanny pack. So I wear a fanny pack that mitigates the damage from EMFs, so blocks EMFs. And, obviously bodybuilders back in the day used to wear them, and I wear them all the time because I don't want my phone in my pocket. I'll have it in that fanny pack. So with a case on as well. So I'm trying to mitigate that damage because I know I'm consciously not going to put it on airplane mode on and all the time. And I'm probably not going to put it in my backpack, but I know if I've got it right there, I've got my wallet in there, I've got my phone on there, I got some dollar bills in there, I'm good, so I'm really protecting myself. And a lot of the time I'll wear the mitigating boxer shorts as well, just to protect the crown jewels.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
I don't have any plans for having kids, but like you said, when you study the blue zones and you notice the people who have the interaction, they look after their health, they go to bed at a normal time, and they're still, like you said, sexually active at an older age, then the universe doesn't say, okay, we don't need you anymore. You've given up on reproduction. We will discard you, So you definitely want that for your longevity.
Yeah.
Sure. So when you mentioned about quantifying your sleep, should people disconnect everything from their bedroom, maybe check their home for dirty electricity, and we'll go into that in a moment. I use an Oura Ring. I like the fact that I can put it on airplane mode. Now, what are the more popular trackers out there that people are using that may not be as good, that could be penetrating them with Bluetooth or EMFs 24/7?
There's a lot of them. Most trackers that I know of, unfortunately, use Bluetooth. And that's kind of, to me, is the irony of the tech space that denies these health risks to the maximum because the hype is incredible around wireless technologies. It is so convenient to be able to create devices that do not have a hard drive memory on them. The Oura Ring is an exception because even though this thing, and that's not even the latest generation, but everything is stored locally inside the ring. So it means it will store my biomarkers and all the data it needs to. And then I can do a data dump between my phone and the ring via Bluetooth once a day. Usually I do it in the morning, takes 30 seconds. I'm done, back on airplane mode. However, the most wearable technologies do not have that capability. So it means that it needs to be emitting sometimes multiple times per second, possibly. So Bluetooth is low exposure compared to cell phones. That's mostly true. However, with what we know around EMFs, it wouldn't be my personal choice to advocate for Bluetooth technologies. Now, it depends on how much time you use them. Like if you're a bodybuilder and you use, I don't know, a wrist strap during your workouts, and it represents a few hours every week, is it a big deal compared to other exposures? Well, you tell me. So you have to also focus on what you use the most often for the longest periods of time, and do your best. So certain Bluetooth technologies, I've used Bluetooth chest straps in certain situations, and I was cringing a little bit. But I'm the EMF guy, so I kind of cringe at these things, but that's okay. It's a few minutes, right? So it will not instantly damage you, or so it's more, you have to think in terms of cumulative damage. And that's true with blue light as well. When I go to the movies, I don't wear these. I love the movies and I blast myself with blue light, and I just have my regular glasses on. And I don't care. I know it's not good for my sleep. I get to bed at midnight after watching the Avengers, and I'm like wide awake, and I don't feel good, to be honest. But it was a pleasure to see the movie in its full, like, incredible color. So that's just the reality, right? So you pick your battles and you choose your poisons. So in other situations, when I watch a regular show, I have these on, or I have the more reddish or like dark orange ones to try to spare my sleep. And that's just the reality. So when it comes to EMFs, we shouldn't be, let's say, too dogmatic about exposures like these. But if someone wears something on their person 24/7, and it's Bluetooth and it's emitting all the time, I would rather have them use something else. And I have a bias towards Oura Ring because they get it. But I think that, you know, when bodybuilders and athletes and consumers will demand that things are stored locally so they can sleep better, these companies will respond. That's what Oura did. Oura doesn't admit that EMFs are dangerous. By the way, if you look at the verbiage on their website, it kind of says, if you have a concern about EMFs, you'll be pleased to hear that it can be on airplane mode. They're not sure, and they're not a company specialized in EMF safety, so they shouldn't really bother with this or comment, but it's good that they give users the possibility of doing so. So I think that increasingly it's going to become in the discussion, and I see that more and more athletes and bodybuilders. I was talking with Funk Roberts, there's Paul Chek, the late Charles Poliquin was just reading my book a few weeks before, unfortunately, he passed suddenly. That was quite a shock for me, but it tells you that these high-level trainers like Poliquin were aware of EMFs, and they said to he said to his athletes, guys, this matters. And why does it matter? Well, because you're looking for that extra edge. So if you're looking for human performance, maybe 5% better sleep might make the difference in your contest or in the ring, where whatever your sport is. So the reality is, it's starting to pick up. People test it for themselves, and regardless of the science and the debates and the online people that say, oh no, it doesn't exist. Well, you test it for yourself, and high-level athletes such as you know what works for you. And if you realize that EMF is a factor and you test it over and over again, well, it probably means it's true, right? So I think that athletes are well placed to run their own experiments and determine what is true for them. And I think in the mix, they need to include EMFs. And I also know that a lot of them are kind of addicted to their phone. And I remember I went to Austin, Texas for a business trip, talking to Kyle Kingsbury from the On It podcast. And I saw all these athletes, and you kind of see them on their phone between sets, and they're almost wrestling with their phone in their pocket, right? It's always like they're kind of married to technology, and a good habit should be to kind of let that aside a little bit. You can track your workouts, but kind of put it on airplane mode. And I think that on a personal standpoint, when I started doing that, my workouts are a little bit more intense because I don't get distracted. Oh, I'm going to start texting. So there's also good reasons, regardless of EMFs and even blue light, there's good reasons to redesign our relationship to technology. It's there to serve us. And sometimes it feels like we're kind of plugged 24/7. We're kind of slaves to it, to the notifications or social. So, and we talk about it in entrepreneurial circles, looking at your email 30 minutes in the morning and at night, kind of having control over how much time you spend looking at devices. So I think the wider discussion here is so important to just our relationship to these machines. And are you kind of wasting a lot of your attention and life just looking at the machine because there's a notification and something like that? So our relationships, I think at the moment, they're still very broken towards phones in particular, but all of technology and how we use it. So when you decide to do something about EMFs, I think for a lot of people, it's a gateway into having a more mindful relationship with their phone. And when someone tells me, Nick, yesterday I realized I didn't even touch my phone all day. I don't even know where my phone is. That's the best litmus test for someone who has a good relationship with their phone. They say, oh, I don't even know where my phone is now. That's good, because it means you spent your day doing something else. And hopefully it wasn't on a tablet, but you know what I'm saying. So it means that you're not addicted or glued to it. You can be productive, do something else.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. Like I tell all my clients that you have to bookend your day, because of course a lot of my clients are entrepreneurs, but you have to bookend your day. I tell every single one of them, I don't want you on your phone for a minimum after an hour after you wake up and 2 hours before bed. And that is when, in the evening, you've got to put on your blue light blocking glasses. You've got to relax, don't have any exposure, or, even fit your house out with like the light bulbs like I have. It looks like a brothel upstairs in my bedroom because it's all,
the red light district. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But, it's really helped my sleep no end. I suffered from bad sleep. I was sleeping 3 hours a night because I had mold toxicity from when I was in India. So that's when I really went down the rabbit hole on sleep, because noticing with my clients, if they hadn't eaten the day before, chances are it was okay. But if they hadn't slept well, or if they hadn't hydrated well, that's when I noticed their performance was starting to decline. And you could be the tough guy and say, I didn't have any sleep, but I'm still going to go for it. Well, your body can only recover so much. And like you said, this is when your body is detoxifying. So, not only is your body detoxifying, but your brain is as well. And Dr. Spinalg of the Spinalg Clinic in Oldsmouth, Florida, he said he was dealing with a lot of people. He used to, in his clinic, deal with people that had various mental disorders, such as dementia or Parkinson's or anything like that, when they were like in their 70s, 80s. Now he's dealing it with people that are in their 40s and 50s. And he's like, these people are not taking care of their brains. Obviously, there's heavy metal contaminants, like you said, that can be a neurotoxin. But then, we're not sleeping. We're not sleeping as we once would. And then our testosterone starts to decline. And we have just this roller coaster of issues that we're dealing with. Unfortunately, we want to fix after it's sometimes too late, So going back to the home, about what you can do. And you mentioned when you were in Vegas and you wrapped the clock in foil. Are you traveling around with a meter to measure the EMFs? And can people, our listeners, purchase these readers so they can see their dirty electricity or EMF exposure in their own home or where they're traveling to?
Yeah, I have, if you look up my name, Nick Pinot, or just the EMF guy on YouTube, you're going to find one of my latest videos is me in a hotel room. Where was I? I was at the Upgrade Labs conference. It used to be called the Bulletproof Conference in Florida last September. And I did an entire walkthrough of how I use an EMF meter to identify the sources. And sometimes you're just surprised of how certain things act. For example, the alarm clock. At first, I wouldn't have thought that the alarm clock emits 24/7. It looked like you had maybe to press Bluetooth for it to start sending a beacon signal and something like that. But it was not the case. It was just emitting all the time. So sometimes you find that certain things you thought would expose you to EMFs are not emitting. And the contrary is also true. A lot of sources are just emitting, and it's a surprise. Sometimes you have to turn off the Bluetooth on your computer and you did not realize that that icon is there. There's a lot of different situations where you're just exposed to needless exposures, and that's kind of the ones to tackle first. The exposures that you know you're having, and it's a decision, it's another thing, but all the avoidable exposures that are needless, I think, is just silly, and you should get rid of them. So that's really why I think everyone should own at least a very simple EMF meter. There's one called the Enviro RD10, and this one is on my website, theemfguy.com. That's through Rad Meters in Israel, but they ship worldwide. It's very small, and I travel with it. It's just a detector. It can tell you, okay, this thing is emitting wireless. I should move this thing over there, and it's very useful. And there's another one, the CM ProTech 34 from France that Brian and I recommend in our course. Still a bit more precise, and the readings are, you also have the sound function, and the readings are more realistic, or let's say scientifically accurate. That's the term. So there's many meters out there, but if you're just a beginner, you might pick up something very simple, and sometimes it's just going to help you identify what is emitting and what is not. A good example: you get in a new car. I don't own a car, but I do rent them maybe six times per year to go to my relatives and different places, especially during the holiday season or summer season. So I get in a new car, and every time it's a new model, I get Kia, I get Hyundai, I get everything. And the first thing I do is I go in the dashboard with an EMF meter, and I look, is this thing emitting Bluetooth? Most of the time it's on, because prior people that rented the car linked their phones, and I don't want Bluetooth. Usually I don't use Bluetooth, or I use the cord on my phone, kind of USB thing, instead of Bluetooth. So I go in the car settings, and I see the Bluetooth that is on. And sometimes, in most situations, still, it's not true of all cars, but sometimes I'm able to turn it off, and I see the measurable difference on the meter, and I tell myself, well, here's a good thing. I'm going to drive for 2 hours. I don't have that exposure close to my face. And that's just an example of when you're aware of these things, you can just remove an exposure here and there, and just think that in the grand scope of things, you're removing stressors from your life. And the stressors that I choose to endure on my body, like good wines, late night sleep. Yesterday, I went out with my wife, had 2-3 drinks, and it's a Wednesday. So I'm okay, but it was worth it. It was completely worth it. But the other exposures that are needless and don't serve you in any way whatsoever, you're able to pick them apart and remove them from basically from what would affect it or stress your body. So it's really, when it comes to EMFs, it's really that. It's understanding that you should focus on your cumulative exposure and start with one thing. Start with like turning off your phone at night, or when you carry it on your person, just have a different strategy. And then you go from there. And maybe you'll decide to turn off your Wi-Fi at night, to set it on a Christmas light timer, for example. And you go from there. And eventually you pick up the glasses. You listen to Kris and start wearing those 2 hours prior to bed. So it's a little bit, it's a few action steps that you still want to take gradually. I think if you try to do it all and change all your habits, how you handle your phone, the Wi-Fi, plug your computer with Ethernet cables and all this, it might be a little bit too much. Like, you have other things to think about, especially if you're an entrepreneur or a high-level athlete. But you just take it one thing at a time, and at least you start including that in your framework of thinking about what impacts you. And that's really my message around EMFs is you should not ignore it. Even though it's very inconvenient, even though a lot of people would like to ignore it, it's there and it is impacting you whether you like it or not. So why not do something about it and get started? That's really, really the message.
Yeah, it's definitely all about balance, because some people will see what I do online, on a daily basis, and they're like, oh my God, how do you find the time? Well, I don't really think about it. It's a habit now, because I'm trying to invest in the most important thing in my life is myself. For sure, and a lot of these things, like you said, it's so easy. And we all like certain forms of inflammation or hormetic responders, whether it be cold therapy, hot therapy, or exercise. But like you said, that is serving us. Whereas, like you said, a lot of this is needless, where we don't have to be exposing ourselves to systemic stress 24/7, because then we're not
Exactly.
going to be able to recover for the stress that is going to serve us. So let's go into the summit now, because I selfishly, I want to learn a little bit about this summit before we delve into it as well. So what is this exactly going to cover? Is it going to cover, for instance, I've got a microwave in the house. Is it going to cover, is that exposure going to be bad for me and my food? Is it going to cover everything, like you said, gamma rays or X-rays? Like I'm going for an MRI next week. I injure myself a lot. You know, I participate in various outdoor activities, and I'm usually falling, and at 47 years old, I probably should be slowing down a little bit. So I just had an X-ray this week. I'm getting exposed to this. I went to the dentist last week to get fitted for Invisalign, so they needed another X-ray. Will you be covering all of this exposure so people know how they can mitigate possibly some of this damage, such as the microwaves that are in their house? And just wanted you to answer that question, what people that are listening here now, what they can expect by giving up their time for this summit.
Sure. Yeah, we have a lot of speakers that talk about specific exposures. For example, one speaker talks specifically about the phone and goes even more in depth than what we talked about on how to handle your phone and whether you should use Bluetooth earpieces. And the answer is probably not, because you're kind of replacing one bad thing with another. Another speaker is talking about solar panels. Some people don't realize that when you install them at home, you should take care in especially the type of converter that you use, and the entire setup is important because it can create massive amount of dirty electricity. And some people install solar panels and start feeling uneasy in their home or have a hard time sleeping, and that's because of how the solar panel convert the energy and can really pollute the entire electricity in your home. So it's a bit of a technical issue, still something you want to hear about. Turns out most Americans have thought about getting solar panels in the last years, according to surveys. So it's very, very important to look at different sources. There's also, we do talk about supplements that might mitigate EMF damage. There's one researcher that I was very impressed with, Dr. Marco Ruggiero, MD, PhD, and he has developed a special supplement that can help mitigate EMF damage on a cellular level. And it's different compared to other antioxidants like glutathione or vitamin C or zinc. And it's very specifically addresses EMF related stress. And it's I think that it will serve the segment of the population that is electrosensitive better than anyone else, because he's seeing great results when it comes to reduction of symptoms. So we do talk about electrosensitivity. I have an entire presentation, for example, that helps you identify, am I having these symptoms of electrosensitivity? And even if you're an athlete, even if you don't think you are, maybe there's some things that are related to electrosensitivity. A common thing that it isn't so common, but is very characteristic of electrosensitives is tinnitus, or ringing in the ear. A lot of people get it nowadays, and a lot of people realize when they go away from the city, it will subside or completely eliminate. So it has to do with a certain degree of sensitivity, and some people can literally hear microwave radiation. And that's called the microwave auditory effect, or the Frey effect. So it's, in fact, it's been known since the 70s that some people can hear radar. They can literally hear the radar, whereas most people cannot. So it's very fascinating to get into these conversations. And of course, we have a little bit of politics in there, in the sense that we have Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Daphne Takover, two attorneys and activists that are talking about the reality. How is it possible that the regulatory agencies are failing us so much? And like Robert F. Kennedy says, the telecoms have captured Washington. And the reality is things are progressing very slowly when it comes to EMF safety. And mostly because there's a big industry that doesn't want these results to get out to the public. So it's very inconvenient science that many scientists are trying to do, but it's there's a lot of money involved. And like it happened with asbestos or cigarette smoke or even trans fats, there's big industries that do not like this line of research and would prefer to just roll out new wireless technologies and do business as usual. But there's economical realities And some people would say, oh, that's all a conspiracy. No, it's just, unfortunately, something a little bit broken about our world, I think, is lobbying, and how much industry has pressure on governmental agencies kind of slows down the progress, I think, of science and humanity. So it's just, the reality is we're going to also talk about the legal aspect of EMFs, how to fight for your rights, and whether we can do something about it, and how to get involved. And finally, we also have Brian Hoyer, of course, who talks about shielding your home. He does talk about the fact that you can shield your bedroom, and that's a bit of a advanced move to do. That's something I'm planning for my bedroom 2 years down the road, because we just purchased this condo, and I'll do a remodel and have a shielded bedroom, which can be a great thing as an investment long-term for my health. For the next 10, 15, 20 years, I'll live here. I'll be sleeping in a nearly no EMF zone. And that's an interesting proposition if you know that it might improve your sleep. So it's just creating a sleep sanctuary. So Brian talks about the shielding technologies, and whether it's compatible with 5G. And we do talk about all these new 5G networks also, and what it means. But, it's not a summit with a lot of speculations. I'm not big into, there's a lot of crazy, I'll say it like this to be polite to everyone, but there's a lot of crazy stuff that has been published on EMFs, a lot of crazy stuff that I don't agree with. Who I invite on my summit is scientists, doctors, activists, engineers, people with credentials who can talk about it in a calm way and say, look, here's the science, here's what we don't know, and here's what we should do. It's not about this stuff will kill you instantly and these hyperboles that I keep seeing that I don't feel comfortable with. So the reality is there's a lot of stuff online that in my mind is a little bit over the top in how it's marketed or said. And the reality is we should say EMF is another environmental stressor like air pollution or toxins in your food, and you should minimize it. And that's it. It doesn't get really more complicated than that. So it's really a summit where I want to have the best experts. And that's something I'll do annually, by the way. I haven't announced it yet, but in the fall, I want to have a second edition. And I want to invite the best scientists to give them a platform. A lot of them are not being well funded, and we need to hear from these people because it's a huge issue and a lot of people are still in denial. So that's really, there's also, I guess, a humanitarian aspect to this work where I want to get the word out, like let's normalize this and realize that this is a real issue.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm really looking forward to this summit, and obviously listening to Brian Hoyer. Brian stayed here for a couple of days. I slept in his Faraday cage, and that is our next move, to get the Faraday cage around our 4-poster bed there. So, I can sleep soundly at night, knowing that I'm mitigating that damage that is infiltrating, especially sometimes when you're living on a second floor. So Can you let us know when people can sign up for the summit, the date of the summit, and we will obviously put the links in the show notes where people can sign up for it as well.
Perfect. So, just go to Kris's link, and the URL is emfhazards.com. Go to Kris's link, so that way he gets also, I think it's part of your model as an influencer to recommend events. And I'm very happy that you're an affiliate for us. And the summit is going on from March 24th to the 27th. It's completely free, so you can watch it every day. There's 4 different sets of speakers during these dates, and then if you want to buy the recordings, it's $37. To be completely transparent, I'm not hiding the prices and things like that. It's quite low compared to a lot of summits. I see a lot of summits that are more like $100, and we wanted to price it very reasonably for people who want to look at the recordings and study them a little bit further, and you get the transcripts and everything else in that package, but it's optional. And if people just want to look at one talk for free and then be gone, I'll be happy, because at least they're gonna start getting educated, and maybe they're gonna talk to their neighbors or in their family. They're gonna have the discussion like, hey, maybe we should turn off the Wi-Fi and see what happens. So it's really, for me, it's a mission that is near and dear to my heart, and the goal is just awareness and spreading the word out, and kind of letting go of the entire tinfoil narrative that no, it's not tinfoil, as I said in the book. So
yeah, and speaking of which, guys, grab this book as well. It is a great resource.
Thank you.
If you've just, haven't heard much about EMFs and you want to know what you can do as well from a basic level to the more advanced levels, it's a great read to have on your shelf to review and refer to every now and again. But thank you ever so much for this interview. It was a real pleasure. Just before we do sign off, should people want to reach out to you, how do they contact you?
Yeah, just go to theemfguy.com. I have contact info on there. I have links to the courses I have, and most of my information is free. I have blog posts, but mainly it's through the Smarter Tech podcast, where I interview experts, including Brian, including scientists. And I go a little bit wider, talk about PEMF technology, red light therapy, and the beneficial uses of certain EMFs also. So I go wider and look at, okay, what tech can really serve our life instead of making us addicted and miserable like some phones are doing for some people. So I want us to just rebuild that relationship with tech, and that's with the Smarter Tech podcast and also YouTube channel, where I have the video versions and other demonstrations of how to use meters and such. Okay. All right. Well, that's great. That's phenomenal. So awesome. Thank you very much for your work and serving for the greater good. We really, really do appreciate you. And thank you very much for your time and being a great guest on the show. So thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you listening. This is the Kris Gethin podcast. And for myself and Nicholas, we are out. Thank you ever so much for listening. My name is Kris Gethin, and I am out.